Welcome to the UCM Interface Bible Study Podcast, isang Bible study podcast by Pinoys for Pinoys, hosted by UCM Interface, ang young adults community ng Union Church of Manila. Taglish conversational, expository, or inductive study method. Di kami experts, most of us are young professionals, but we do try our best to study context and let Scripture speak for itself. Sa aming book studies at special topics, ang goal namin is to provide you with materials to help you live, work, speak, and serve as a follower of Jesus Christ. Thanks for joining us! At kung trip nyo itong ginagawa namin, please subscribe, share with your friends and family, and please rate and review the podcast as it helps others discover this program. Okay, hello everybody! Again, we are back after our long break.
Yeah.
My name is Gutch, commercial voice artist.
Ako si Rainier, ang Young Adult Ministry Director ng Union Church of Manila.
And we have a new set of guests for this new season. Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm an artist and I also teach elementary students.
Wow! Meron tayong teacher doon.
And artist.
Oo.
Pag binisita nyo yung headquarters ng Young Adult Ministry sa Union Church, meron dong exhibit, Nax, ng paintings isang series na paintings ni
Uy,
Anna.
Hindi ko nakikita yun. Check ko nga.
Naka-display yun doon.
Okay, great. And next?
Hello, my name is Anton and I'm a data strategist.
Yun.
Wow.
What does a data strategist do exactly?
Well, we come up with innovative solutions to counter a particular problem using a lot of data.
Wow, okay.
Wala ko naintindihan.
Oo na lang ako. Hindi ko na-gets eh.
Mo na lang din ako.
Sige, alright. Before we go to our topic, we have some announcements muna. Union Church recently launched Worship Night last September. It's our evening service, which is every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Ito, medyo mas chill yung setting. We're going through the Book of Proverbs. So, if you guys are in the area, come on over and join us. 5:30 p.m., Union Church of Manila, Rada, Corner Legazpi, Makati City.
Idadagdag ko rin, Coach, that we are also offering a Bible study for those who attend Worship Night. Every Sunday at 3:30 p.m., meron ding Bible study group.
Yon, 3:30, right before the evening service. So, sakto. That's your Bible study, Rainier. Tama na ba?
Yes.
Yon. So, to our listeners, you are very welcome to be part of Rainier's Bible study at 3:30 and then join us na rin for worship sa Worship Night at 5:30 para isang lakaran na lang tapos dinner na lang sa Makati, di ba?
Tama.
So, yun. So, okay.
Yeah.
Kung tayo sa ating next season. Andito na tayo sa ating 7th season ng podcast. Seventh season, di ba? Pag-uusapan natin for this season is the Book of Jonah. It's a very short book. 4 chapters lang. 48 verses total. I think it's fairly familiar.
Probably.
Is it familiar to you guys? Have you guys encountered Jonah growing up?
Yes, and this was my 5th grade declaration piece.
5th grade? Nirecite mo yung lahat?
I only memorized the prayer at the end. The rest I kind of narrated.
The
Prayer at the end.
As in,
Chapter 4?
Jonah's prayer in the whale.
in the whale. Okay.
Chapter 2.
kala ko sa dulo, parang wow.
Tragic nun sa isang bata yung chapter 4.
Because I was 5th grade in a Christian school. So.
Ikaw rin, Anton, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I have no excuse to say that it's not familiar with me. So
Saan natin na-associate yung Jonah? When you see artwork na Jonah, ano agad?
the fish.
Oh, I grew up with a whale.
Exactly. The big fish.
Yeah.
Or the whale. For some reason, the big fish has taken preeminence.
So yun na spotlight na, no?
Oo, yung fish.
Actually, syempre, as a father, may mga kids materials kami dito. Yun na yung highlight. Pagka dumating kay Jonah, it's the big fish. Kasi I guess, it's so different from any other prophet. It's such a fantastic thing na bongga na pwede ikwento sa mga bata. Parang ganang klase.
Yung unique selling point niya.
Unique selling point, yeah. Actually, I think sa lahat ng prophets, Jonah would be probably one of the most popular characters.
Yes,
Especially sa kids materials. I would say na siya yung most popular. Okay, first things first, before we start yung discussion natin with the first chapter, I'm just gonna do a short background on the book, which we usually do before we start a season.
Yeah.
When I usually do this, like sa Ruth or sa Daniel, we usually go through like background, yung author, yung date, yung purpose. Pero ito kasi yung Jonah, kakaiba to eh. Kaya I'll just jump straight to talking about the book as a whole and then yung big issue niya.
But I can also add a few more details.
Sige. So, Book of Jonah, and the very strange thing thing kasi dito, unlike other books about prophets, it's not about the prophecy. It's about the prophet. Tama, di ba?
Tama.
It's a narrative about Jonah.
Mhm.
I mean, primarily it's about God, of course. Na yung call ng Panginoon kay Jonah and yung unexpected response niya and unexpected responses ng mga tao around him. And so, jumping to the big issue, the big elephant in the room, the big fish in the room. Marami kasing mga unbelievers who look at this story and they say na parang it's just a myth kasi fantastical di ba? It's such a kid's tale, giant fish. So, nagiging fable style lang siya.
Uh-oh.
However, the Jews accepted it as historical and even Jesus mismo vouched for its truth, which is in Matthew 12 and also sa Luke 11. Tapos si Jonah, the son of Amittai, was also mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 14 verse 25. So, we believe it's true. However, ang tanong ngayon, what do we mean when we say that it's true? Is it true as a historical account? I guess that's where the tricky part is kasi
Yes.
dalawa yung schools of thought dito. Tama ba rin yun?
Right. There are two schools of thought. One is this a historical account of the things that happened in the story?
As in exactly happened as it was recorded.
Uh-oh.
As in, did it happen blow by blow?
Another view is this could be a form of narrative parable. Kumbaga, extended parable siya. A story narrated in parabolic form.
Some issues lang kasi dito with this particular book is wala siyang dates.
Walang date.
Wala siyang pangalan ng king.
Which is surprising
Oo.
kasi halimbawa itong Assyrian king. Noong panahon na yon, he was the most powerful political figure.
Yeah.
Pero hindi man lang binigay yung pangalan. Sinong king yung tinutukoy dito? Sino tong king ng Nineveh na to? The name wasn't even mentioned and this is so unusual for prophetic books.
Yeah.
Basahin mo yung mga Jeremiah, Isaiah, Hosea. They
Yeah,
would always
meron.
name or identify the names of the kings.
That's
Maybe
right.
the king of Babylon or whoever. Lahat yan ibibigay yung pangalan. Not in Jonah.
Yeah.
And also, kasi nga alam natin, Jonah is a prophetic book. But may absent na element na dapat common sa lahat ng mga prophetic books. Ito yung mga prophetic utterances. Thus says the Lord, ganyan-ganyan.
Yeah,
And they
okay.
are poetic utterances. Walang ganun si Jonah.
Tapos yun nga, yung mga baka nag-repent din So,
Right. Even the cows fasted and repented. Ano ba?
diba? Mga nakakita ng cows na nag-repent, diba?
Kaya nga, it reads like a satire. It's full of exaggerations. Ito pa, pag pumunta ka na naman sa chapter 3, ang sabi, it took him like 3 days to walk around the city of Nineveh. Wow, ang laki naman ng city when in fact yung ancient cities are very small. An example of an ancient city here in Manila is Intramuros.
Ayun.
Maliit lang. Ang Nineveh, yung perimeter niya is only about 12 kilometers.
That is not 3 days.
That's not 3 days.
Marami pa yata yung daily steps mo nun, Rainier.
Ay, oo. So, very unique itong libro na to. It is so unlike any prophetic book in the Bible.
And while Jesus did mention this and vouched for its truth, was he emphasizing historicity or yung theological emphasis ng Book of Jonah?
So, may mga ganyang arguments, okay? And mind you yung dalawang views na to, pareho mga like solid Christian theologians, meron silang iba-ibang views. Evangelical theologians, ganun yung views nila. It's sort of at odds with each other.
Yeah. But in any case, maraming mga very intelligent people on both sides of this. Far more intelligent than us.
Oh, millions of galaxies.
So, hindi to isang like, this is not a hill that we are gonna die on.
No,
we don't have like
no.
a super hard stance on it. And I also don't think whether you take the historical or the parable satire perspective, I don't think people will miss out on the richness that's packed in this
Right.
short book.
Right. Okay.
So before we discuss, let's go through our reading of the first chapter of Jonah in 3, 2, 1. The Book of Jonah. Chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying,
Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.
But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his God, and they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship, and had lain down and was fast asleep. So the captain came and said to him,
"What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us, that we may not perish."
And they said to one another,
"Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us."
So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him,
"Tell us, on whose account this evil has come upon us? What is your occupation, and where do you come from? What is your country, and what people are you?"
And he said to them, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." Then the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him,
"What is this that you have done?"
For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then they said to him,
"What shall we do to you, that the sea may quiet down for us?"
For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. He said to them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you." Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. Therefore they called out to the Lord,
"O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood, for you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you."
So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Exciting, di ba? Okay, so before we begin, shout out lang, special thanks to our guest readers for this round. Si Ron Titular as the voice of God, si Jello Papa as the voice of the captain and the mariners, and then Rainier will also come up in a future episode. You'll know it when you hear it. And ako yung boses ng narrator at si Jonah. And that's it. Okay, game.
Okay, let's begin. As usual, we go verse by verse. Let's begin with verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. And alam mo, marami na agad sinabi yan dyan eh. Marami na yan. Okay. So, para siyang stereotypical prophetic book. Yung introduction. Una, tingnan natin yung background kay Jonah. Anton, please read 2 Kings 14, 23 to 27.
In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. He restored the border of Israel from Lebo Hamath as far as the sea of the Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke by his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gath Hefer. For the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter, for there was none left, bond or free, and there was none to help Israel. But the Lord had not said that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven. So he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Joash.
Wow, marami na.
Marami. Oh, yeah. So, Jonah is a historical figure. Totoo siya.
Yes.
Isa siyang prophet who served which king?
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam the second. You have to be specific. Is he a good king?
They said he was evil.
He was a very evil king.
Just like his namesake.
Ang unique dito, Jonah prophesied favorably for this faithless, heretical king. Ang kanyang prophecy, alam mo, Jeroboam come, you will expand your borders and your territories. At nangyari nga. Pero nagkaroon ng reversal to later on. In Amos chapter 7, pinag-expand nga yung territory ni Jeroboam as prophesied by Jonah. Pero nabawi lahat yon. Nabawi lahat yon kasi dumating na yung Assyrians.
Which is the people here.
Right. Oo. At least we know something about Jonah, that he was a prophet, historical, totoo siyang tao. Ngayon, alamin natin yung pangalan ni Jonah, yung meaning ng pangalan ni Jonah. You know what his name means? Dove.
Dove, like the peace bird.
Yung kalapati, yung marami dyan sa bintana ako. Pero pag yung dove, naalala niyo ba yung sa Genesis chapter 8 when Noah released a
dove.
Dove. And we know that the dove is para siyang it's an enduring symbol of peace, a symbol of compassion.
Yeah.
And God wanted to send a dove to Nineveh. And what was the message? We know it's a message of compassion, inviting the people, the wicked Ninevites, to repent. Ang ganda, di ba?
Yeah.
But the word dove also means moan and lament. When doves cry, sabi nga ni hindi nyo na inabutan yan. Si Prince. Kanta ni Prince yan, when doves cry. So Jonah, whose name means dove, which is a symbol of compassion, symbol of peace, also means lament. And what did he do in chapter 4?
He lived up to his name.
He did. Naglament din siya, di ba? But at the same time, we know that doves, di ba sila yung sinasacrifice? They're offered as atoning sacrifice. Parang ganyan, di ba?
Yeah. Which is what was sacrificed by Mary and Joseph.
Right. Offering nila yun. Oo. Tapos, makikita natin yan. That's exactly what happened in chapter 1 also. In a way, he was sacrificed. He was hurled into the sea. At saka itong pangalan ni Jonah din, like in Psalm 55 verses 4 to 8, hindi ko na lang babasahin. Pero yung the psalmist here in Psalm 55 is longing to be a dove so he could flee from the terrors of death. Yun yung description sa Psalm 55. Na parang ganun din si Jonah. Fleeing from the terror of Nineveh. So nakita nyo, pangalan pa lang ni Jonah, kinuwento na yung buong story.
So the dove, a message of hope and compassion, but also a dove that's gonna be a lament. A dove that is going to be a sacrifice, and also a dove that's gonna flee.
Yeah, lahat yun. Pangalan pa lang ni Jonah, kinuwento na yung buong libro. And guess what? Maganda rin yung pangalan ng tatay niya, si Amittai.
Yes.
Ang ibig sabihin ng name ni Amittai is faithfulness.
Wow.
The dove who is
A son of
the
faithfulness.
son of faithfulness. And who is the most faithless character in the story?
Jonah himself.
Nakuha nyo? It's satirical.
Yeah.
So parang yung character ni Jonah parang nakakatawa eh. No? So anyway, verse 2.
Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.
Si Dove, son of faithfulness, anong gagawin sa kanya?
Punta ka sa Nineveh.
Punta ka sa Nineveh, you preach there, and how dangerous is this mission?
So Nineveh is the capital of Assyria.
Yeah.
Alam ko kasi the Assyrians, the enemies of the Israelites. Alam ko they were like known for their cruelty and pride.
Yes, they are. Very, very cruel. And we will describe how wicked and cruel they were.
So parang he's being sent in the middle of the bee's nest or something.
Ang
Right?
ganyan.
Suicide
Oo.
mission.
Parang ganun yung dating nito. This is a suicide mission. Tapos ito, tingnan nyo to ha. Because its wickedness has come up before me. Saan natin na encounter yan? Something has come up before God. Meron yan sa Genesis chapter 4.
Is this Cain?
Yes. And what did God tell Cain?
Your brother's blood.
Blood.
Oo
Is
nga.
crying out.
Oo.
And then in the book of Exodus, ganun din. Crying out. Because of the people, the Israelites were oppressed. Parang merong injustice na nangyayari. So God wants to address this because there is injustice. And He is sending Mr. Dove, the son of faithfulness, to preach against these people who are unjust, corrupt, wicked, immoral, depraved. And then, verse 3.
But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord.
Okay. Plot twist.
Plot
That's all you
twist.
need pala, a ticket to Tarshish.
This is where it turns satirical.
Okay. Ang galing, ano? So, eto may assignment ka sa akin, Anton. I want you to take note of the frequent use of the word down.
Okay, got it.
Ilang beses ginamit yung word down in chapter 1.
Interesting dito sa verse 3 na to is that but Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And then inulit-ulit yun sa dulo ng sentence na to, away from the presence of the Lord. Kasi usually, pagka kinukwento yung Jonah, it's like ayaw niya kasing gawin yung pinapagawa sa kanya. Pero yung wording dito is he fled from the presence of the Lord.
Yeah. Presence of the Lord where? In the temple. As a prophet, you minister and that's your office. Andun ka sa templo. But he was running away from the presence of the Lord, meaning he probably left the temple and went where?
Tarshish.
Ano yung plano niya? He wanted to go to Tarshish. Sayang wala akong mapakitang map dito. Pag nakita mo yung map ng Israel, yung Tarshish, it's on the other side of the known world. Meaning,
Escape.
na the intention is...
Ayoko talaga.
Ayoko! Yun!
I will go to the farthest reaches of the world to prove it.
Basta hindi lang to mangyari.
For some reason, he thought he could get away from God.
Oh. But Anna, I would like you to read Psalm 139:7 and let's see if this strategy will actually work.
Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence?
Do you think Jonas read this verse?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. I'm sure he knows.
Oh, kasi prophet siya eh. Siguro naman.
Kumusta naman yung strategy niya?
A little far-fetched.
I don't think he will succeed, right?
Sobrang desperado. Kahit palpak yung plano, basta hindi lang to mangyari.
Ang tingin ko dito kay Jonah, parang bata. Ano ginagawa ng bata pag talagang, he wants to disobey and rebel against his parents?
They run away.
I'm gonna pack my stuff.
Diba?
Yeah.
We'll find out later in chapter 4 the real motives of Jonah. But for now, tingnan lang natin kung ano yung sinasabi ng text. Eto na, yung kanina, Gochu raised a very important point, and this is about how wicked the Assyrians were. How bad were the Assyrians? So again, we already mentioned that Nineveh was the capital city of Assyria, and the Ninevites or Assyria was this time Israel's worst enemy.
Sila yung superpower during that time, diba?
Oo. Talagang ito yung bane of the ancient world. Pag sinabing Assyria, ay, bad trip yan. Oo.
Lakas. Oo.
Malakas, kinukuha nila lahat ng territories ng ibang nations, etc. This is a very well-developed civilization. Medyo advanced na sila. Kaya lang, at the same time, they were known for their brutality.
Ooh.
Brutal sa treatment nila ng kanilang enemies. Quickly, describe lang natin kung gaano kasama yung Assyrians. Ganito yung ginagawa nila, yung mga discoveries ng mga ating mga archaeologists, etc. And meron mga records that they discovered and how the Assyrians would brag about how they would dismember yung kanilang victims. Puputol-putulin yung katawan, pero buhay.
Wow.
Pero usually, iniiwan yung kamay. And then pag naiwan na yung kamay, isi-shake hands nila yung kamay.
Wow.
Congratulations, ganyan. Pinaglalaroan nila. Tapos, minsan yung mga pugot na ulo, pinaparade pa nila yan. Tapos, guess sino ang magbibit-bit ng impaled heads?
Yung mga prisoners?
Kamag-anak. The relatives or friends of the deceased. Ito pa, pag pupunta ka sa Nineveh, yung pasok mo ng city na yan, meron dong wall, yung mga artwork.
Relief.
Parang ganyan, depicting all the different ways they would torture their victims. Like, welcome to Nineveh.
Proud nga sila.
And this is their capital, diba?
Yeah.
Their pride and joy, the most important city.
Kung ganito naman yung pupuntahan mo and you want to give them a chance, pupunta ka ba? So, maintindihan mo ba si Jonah?
Relate.
Relate much. Okay.
Hashtag cancel culture.
Hashtag cancel culture. Right. So parang, nga naman, why would you send me there? And why would you give our enemies a chance? Pero ito, what is it that we also have to remember about Israel? What is Israel's calling? Gutch, pakibasa yung Isaiah 42, 6-7.
I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. So yan, the light to the nations.
Light to the nations.
Yung calling nila as a holy nation, royal priesthood.
Right. And then, Anton, please read Isaiah 49, verse 6.
It is too light a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to bring back the preserved of Israel. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth.
Okay, light. What kind of light?
For the nations.
Light for the nations. So therefore, did God create Israel for its own sake?
No.
No, they have a purpose. And what is that?
To bring back everybody.
Right, to Yahweh.
To bless the nations.
So remember the story, Genesis 11, 1-9, Tower of Babel. The nations were scattered. But look, chapter 12. God right away responded. He looked for a solution. How do we restore these nations? How do we invite them back to Yahweh? I'm going to use a people group starting from Abraham and then his descendants, and they will bless all peoples on earth, reconciling everyone to God. So that's their calling. And what about Jonah?
Ayaw niya.
No way. Ayaw ko
To Tarshish I go.
Diba? Light to the nations, bahala ka.
Diba? So let's continue. Ano nangyari sa verse 4?
But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up.
Sino yung first agent ni God?
The wind.
The wind, creation, nature. And what happened?
A wind came, and a mighty tempest came on the sea.
God used a force of nature, a force of creation, and it obeyed God, right? Immediate naman, obey ako. Ganun, di ba? Pero may effect siya. Kasi
Nakalug yung ship.
nakalug yung ship, and then it threatened to break up the ship. All right, now next, verse 5.
Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his God, and they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep.
So, sisigawan na sila, panic na sila, lumulubog na yung bangka nila, tapos yung prophet tulog.
Okay, pero Anton, nakailang down na ba tayo?
Up to this verse, I count 4.
Ano yung second down sa verse 3 that you discovered?
So he paid the fare and went down into it. I'm
Ayan.
assuming this is the boat.
Because in the NIV, it says aboard. It's actually down. So nakadalwa na sa verse 3 pa lang. And then in verse 5,
Yeah, going down to the inner part of the ship.
okay. So nakikita niyo yung direction. Can you see the descent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is going deeper and deeper. Now, Anna, ang assignment ni Anton is down. Ang assignment mo, fear or afraid.
Yes.
Okay. Una, they were afraid.
So, the mariners.
So the sailors or the mariners. And then, immediately, anong ginawa nila?
They prayed to their own gods.
Oh, and these are
Pagan gods.
pagan gods, these sailors or mariners. They're pagans. And they seem to be more...
Faithful.
Yes, they can express faith in their false god. At least.
At least, diba?
May faith sila. And then they found a solution. Anong unang ginawa nila?
They lightened their load.
Oh, we need to lighten the load. Versus Jonah, he went down below the deck and
Tulog.
fell asleep. Contrast, pagan sailors versus Yahweh's prophet.
Such a sad comparison.
And yes, what does this signify? Is this just physical sleep?
Well, he's really running away from the Lord's call. So it's not just a physical running away. He's also kind of going...
Spiritual.
Parang
Yes.
ayaw niya talaga.
Yes.
Oo.
This is God's prophet who was supposed to fulfill his mission. He refused to do that. And you see what happens with spiritual sleep? Anong epekto mo sa iba?
It was a problem for everybody.
Yes. And sometimes we think that my sin is just my sin. It's private. It's personal.
Yes.
But
May impact pala sa lahat ng tao.
meron.
It's like one light of the Lord has dimmed out, and that's affecting the full brightness of God.
Exactly. This is not just physical stupor, sleep. This is spiritual stupor. And this is what happens if God's people become spiritually numb. May epekto pala tayo. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, katawan ko lang naman to eh. Personal ko lang naman na buhay to eh. Ako lang ito. No. Right? And you're a prophet. Ano nga yung sinabi dun sa nung lolo ni Peter Parker?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Di ba? Kulang na lang nasa Bible yung quote sa Spider-Man. Di ba? It's very, very true. Our faith cannot be compartmentalized. It cannot be privatized because God affects all of life. And we too can affect all of life. And so if we disobey, may impact siya sa iba and other people can suffer also because of our sin. All right. So ano ngayon? Sino yung next na kumilos? Verse 6.
So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us that we may not perish."
So yung captain naman, yung nag-move.
Captain naman, una yung pagan sailors, now the pagan captain. Sila yung kumikilos. Kumusta naman si Jonah?
Ginising, di ba?
Oo, because he's very indifferent.
Yeah.
Nakita niyo yung indifference niya sa mga everything that's going on? Very calloused. Unlike the captain,
Who's actually doing something.
very proactive.
Yeah.
And even yung message niya dito, di ba? Call out your God.
Call out your God.
May piety pa siya somehow. And then ito yung prophet of God.
Pero kilala na ba nila si Jonah at this point?
Hindi pa nga eh. Yun nga,
Hindi
nagkatago pa nga siya.
Okay.
Yeah.
Parang nakaka-shock lang later na parang, ay, Christian pala yan. Oo, kasi nakikita ko yung mga comments sa Facebook eh. Ay, yung mga ganun. And then, eto pa. Yung mga sailors, in verse 7, let's see what they did.
And they said to one another, "Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us." So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah.
Again, who's taking charge of the situation?
The
Pagans.
sailors.
The pagans.
Sana na naman. Para lahat na ng ibang characters yung gumagalaw.
Oo, si Jonah, tutulog-tulog. Walang pakialam.
Itong cast lots, parang dice to, di ba?
Yeah, parang
yung mga
ganun.
bones, mga ganun klase.
This is like an ancient way of trying to determine the will of the gods. Ganun yan eh.
So ito yung ancient magic 8 ball, kumbaga.
Parang ganyan.
Parang ganun
Oo.
na.
So far, sino rin yung mga agents ni God dito? Yung una, nature. So we have the wind. Then you have the pagan sailors,
Yung captain.
the captain, and this time,
The lots.
Lots.
the next agent. Kasi, sino ngayon yung na-expose dito? They cast lots and the lot fell on Jonah. Nabisto na siya. So, I hope you're seeing the pattern. God had different agents.
Yeah.
They're being used to slowly reveal the truth. And now the truth has come out. Eto na, si Jonah pala. So, what was their question in verse 8?
Then they said to him, "Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you?"
Una, kasi tell who is responsible for making all this trouble for us. Alright?
Okay.
The next one is,
Ano ba
what
trabaho mo?
kind of work do you do? That question actually means, whom do you represent?
Oh.
Kumbaga, anong kumpanya mo? Parang ganon.
Kanino ka ba?
Whom do you represent? Tapos, the following three questions. Where do you come from? What is your country? And from what people are you? Madaling sagutin ni Jonah yan. Ano yung sagot ni Jonah?
I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven.
Diba, the first question, whom do you represent? Yung sumunod na tatlong questions, sinagot lang ng, it's a single phrase.
I'm a Hebrew.
I'm a Hebrew. Nasagot na yung tatlo. Pero yung whom do you represent, ano yan?
I fear the Lord.
I fear the Lord.
So how did he even describe the Lord?
Who made the sea and the dry land?
Okay, who made what?
The sea. And he plans to escape by
By
sea.
sea.
Which I am trying to
Tatakas na
escape.
talaga sa sea. Siya yung nga yung gumawa ng sea. Diba?
Oo, di ba? Kumusta naman?
Nakakatawa lang dito, di ba? I fear the Lord. Talaga? Talaga bang I fear the Lord?
Right. Yes, because this is the hardest question for Jonah to answer. Why? When you say, oh, what kind of work do you do? I worship the Lord. I fear the Lord. It's a question about your
Loyalty.
allegiance,
Yeah.
your commitment, your loyalty. Yun eh. That's the hardest question for Jonah to answer. And he is the Lord who made the land and the sea. How can you run away from the one who created the sea? And you're on a boat. So how do you explain this behavior? This is what?
Foolish.
Foolish.
Stubborn?
Stubbornness. This is rebellion.
Yeah.
Alam mo na nga eh. You know all the facts about the Lord that you're worshiping, the Lord that you're serving. Alam mo na nga eh. They're all given.
Yet.
Diba? Sinuway mo pa rin. That's rebellion. But can you also see the senselessness of our rebellion against God?
Yeah.
Right? Tuloy pa natin. Verses 10 and 11.
All right, so the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, "What is this you have done?" For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. Then they said to him, "What shall we do to you that the sea may quiet down for us?" For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. So may fear na naman.
May afraid na naman. Pang-ilan na yan?
Pangatlo.
Pangatlo na siya. So this could also be translated, what have you done to us?
Dinamay mo kami sa pinaggagawa mo.
Dinamay mo kami. What have you done to us? Kita mo yun? Because of his disobedience, he put the lives of these pagan sailors at risk.
Pero parang wala siyang
Why?
pakialam. Who cares? I'm just gonna sleep it off.
Wala.
I don't care about your lives.
Wala siyang pakialam. Wala talaga siyang pakialam. But I guess you can see the contrast ng pagan sailors and then our prophet, Dove, the son of faithfulness. So,
What I find fascinating dito, something about what you said a while ago about agents. Kasi dito, nabuko na siya eh. Diba? So it's like God using different agents to wake up the real agent of God who doesn't want to move.
the real agent.
Everything else, pinapagalaw ni Lord so that the real agent na ayaw gumalaw should.
Oo. And we also have to keep in mind, he's an Israelite, and Israelites are called to bring the light of God to the nations, right?
Yeah.
And he refuses to do that. So ano nangyayari? Ay nako, kita mo, dinadala mo sila lahat sa darkness. You have put their lives at risk. So eto, kasi, it's getting worse and worse. So why did they have to ask Jonah? Bakit nila tinanong si Jonah?
You angered your God. How do we appease him?
Ayan.
Buti pa sila. May piety sila to another person's God.
Saka may awareness silang ganun. Kumusta naman si Jonah? Wala talaga. He's not doing anything. Dapat nga, umami na siya. Sorry guys, this is my fault. At this point, may nagsasorry na ba siya? Meron ba siyang remorse? May apology siya? Wala naman. So, anong sinabi niya? Anong solution niya?
He said to them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you."
Guys, ito yung unang-unang prophecy niya.
Wow.
Di ba? If you do this, the sea will come down.
So legit naman.
Legit. Okay. So, pick me up. Tapos, ayan, may solution. Ito yung gusto kong makita niyo eh. Una, sabi niya, itapon niyo ako. Instead of him voluntarily just jumping into the sea.
Talagang
Right?
passive lang siya through the whole thing.
Passive. Not really doing anything. Itapon niyo ako. And then his solution was, anong ibig sabihin ito? Throw me into the sea.
Kill me.
Kill me. His solution is end my life. He would rather die. Because if he dies...
At least the mission is gonna fail.
Yes, exactly.
So sabotage.
Sabotage pa din. Oh my. Wala talagang remorse. And so far, this is all about Jonah himself.
Yeah.
Whereas the sailors were concerned about everyone, even Jonah's safety. In fact, did the sailors want to do it? Okay, Anna, please read verse 13.
Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them.
Ay.
So you would expect na the pagans, sige, we'll save our lives, we'll throw you out. Pero dito, we won't do that. You're valuable.
Oh, yeah. At least ino-honor pa nila yung buhay ni Jonah. Even if Jonah was the reason why their lives were at risk. Diba?
Isa-save pa rin nila, grabe.
Isa-save pa nila
Bayani.
si Jonah. Nakikita niyo ba yung contrast ng pagan sailors versus Jonah? So I hope you can appreciate that. Okay, tingnan natin, review natin so far what these pagan sailors have done. Una, they tried calling on their gods. Number two, they tried to lighten the ship. Very proactive.
Yung lighten the ship, we'd rather lose this stuff than lose our life.
Than lose our lives, including Jonah's life.
Oh, including Jonah's life.
Yes.
Yeah.
They value everyone's life.
Over stuff.
Over stuff, over material things.
Diba?
Okay,
Grabe,
and then
no?
they asked Jonah to pray. Sumunod, nag-cast lots pa sila. In-interrogate si Jonah. And then, nag-row. Row your boat. So they did everything nothing. And
Wala.
Lalo pang lumala yung storm. So each time the storm was mentioned, palapit na sila ng palapit sa katotohanan itong mga sailors na to. So, in verse 14,
Therefore they called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you.
who now is calling on the Lord?
Pagan.
The pagans, after learning that, he's the Lord, he's the God who created the seas and the dry land, has Jonah called the Lord?
No, he has
No.
not.
Time, wala talaga.
Wala. And he's supposed to be a
Prophet.
prophet.
Nauna pa yung mga mariners na mag-pray to the Lord kaysa yung sumusunod sa kanya, di ba?
Right. Biro mo yun, nabuo agad yung conviction ng sailors, the pagans, when they witnessed the power of God. Whereas Jonah's concern, his only concern was, how do I not get involved? How do I sabotage this mission?
Yeah.
In verse 14, sabi, don't take it against us, right?
Sorry, Lord, papatay kami.
Oo, may konsyensya. Si Jonah ba may konsyensya? Now, eto na. So, verse 15,
So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. So sila pa rin yung mover, di ba?
Sila pa
Inagis na nila
din.
si Jonah.
Sila lang kumikilos. Pero, ano naging impact nito dun sa sailors? Verse 16,
Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows.
okay, so Anna, you counted
Fourth?
4. So itong greatly feared, they feared a great fear. Ganun yan sa the literal translation.
So, nag-pick up na to the height of fear.
Oo.
Kasi fear, and then ngayon is greatly feared. Feared exceedingly.
Intensified na yung fear of Yahweh, of the Lord. And then, what did they do?
Offered sacrifices.
Oh, wow. May worship na. And then,
May vows.
may vows.
So, sila pa yung nag-vow.
Sila pa.
Compared dun sa prophet na may dapat na may vow.
Siya yung may
Yeah.
vow.
Wow.
So, lahat ng in-expect natin na dapat ginagawa ni Jonah, hindi niya ginagawa, and guess who was
Doing
fulfilling everything that this prophet should have been doing?
The pagans.
Pagans.
Everybody around him.
My.
Yeah.
And then in verse 17,
And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights.
okay, gusto ko i-reserve natin tong verse 17 sa next episode. Kasi tuloy-tuloy pa yan yung the mention of the fish in verse 2. And this is where, again, yung may reference si Jesus sa Matthew and also in Luke.
Right.
We will talk about this in the next episode. Okay.
Sure.
For now, it is very clear to us that anong nangyari kay Jonah?
Everything happened to Jonah, but si Jonah yung hindi gumagalaw from the very
Okay.
beginning. I think the only thing he did here was just run eh.
And nagbayad siya.
Nagbayad pa, di ba? Nagbayad pa siya para hindi gawin yung trabaho niya.
Yes.
He had
yes.
one job, and the one thing he did was to not do that job.
Okay, ibig sabihin, very deliberate yung action.
Yes.
Hindi to yung, honest mistake, napabayad lang ako. Hindi ganun eh.
No.
It was intentional. So this was his rebellion. Okay,
Yeah.
may tanong din ako sa inyo. So nakita natin dito yung stubbornness ni Jonah, his rebellion. Do you think he just woke up one day and then he was like this, rebellious and stubborn?
Oh, no.
No. He was probably a very nice kid and then became a prophet, probably a very faithful prophet.
I mean, considering meron siyang track record of being a prophet dun sa 2 Kings meaning active prophet siya. Hindi to
Okay.
one-time thing. Pero chances are, nga, parang nag-grow na siya ng bitterness eh.
Yes.
Understandable though. I mean,
Maybe it crept up on him slowly. Kind of like you said, maybe he was that good kid growing up. Ganyan, he became a prophet. And then kind of slowly the bad news started coming in. Now, this is what the Assyrians are doing in here and here. And then as he hears that and as he is justly outraged at the things that these people are doing, that feeling in and of itself is probably not bad. But the effect on him might have been that nilamon siya nung anger na yun. And then he forgot his proper job and instead focused more on these people. They deserve this. They deserve this. They should all go to hell.
destruction. Parang ganun.
Yeah, like he started thinking that he knew better than God what should happen to these people.
Okay,
Oh,
so may
yeah.
tension. Because I also want justice. May tension nung justice na gusto mo, justice on your terms, versus God's justice. Remember at the the start of the chapter. It recalls what happened in Genesis 4, Cain and Abel, and then Exodus.
Evil has come up before me.
There. And God's way of dealing with wickedness is to give a second chance, or maybe many, many chances, to the perpetrators of injustice. I don't like that.
What? I mean, we laugh at Jonah, pero it's so relatable. If we would consider certain people, whoever it is that we would consider as quote-unquote our enemies, I don't think they're as bad as the Assyrians.
No,
Considering
they're not as bad as the Assyrians.
Diba, dinescribe mo yung mga Assyrians. So ito yung pinagagawa nila sa mga kapitbahay ni Jonah, sa mga kamag-anak ni Jonah. Diba? I don't think, I don't know, we can understand yung that type of anger that he had. Pero at the same time, he had a calling.
Right. Bakit kasi nagkakaroon tayo ng ganitong conflict with God's vision of justice, of life, anything?
Because we want to call the shots. We think we know better. Kaya nga diba, na parang, Lord, ba't ganito yung nangyayari? If I were God, I would do this. Which means, Lord, I know better than you.
Right, right. Ang mahirap dito kasi pinapapunta si Jonah dun sa territory ng enemy to send a message of hope. Compassion, second chance. So you don't stop bringing that kind of message, or the message of God, this message of hope, of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of love, steadfast love, His compassion. You don't stop. Never withhold it.
Ang hirap.
Ang hirap.
You know what's interesting about that then is that, syempre, throughout when I was preparing for this material, it really, really made an impact for me yung 3 times sinabi tong away from the presence of the Lord. Sa mga kids materials, usually, he didn't want to do what God wanted him to do. Pero dito, it specifically said, he fled from the presence of the Lord. So hindi lang siya, I don't want to do what you want. If we don't obey God, we do not want God.
That's correct.
Because God is the source of all compassion, love, forgiveness. And we don't want that. We don't want this God.
Yeah, itong theme na to, moving away from the presence of God, nagsimula yan sa Genesis chapter 3. Naging pattern na siya sa atin. Remember when Adam and Eve sinned, they usurped God's authority. They were placed on the east side of the garden. And then Cain. Ano nangyari kay Cain?
Yun, farther east.
Right? And then when the people built the ziggurats, or the tower in the Tower of Babel, they moved eastward again.
Away from the presence of the Lord. Pero interesting kasi ngayon, the one who's moving away from the presence of the Lord is the prophet.
It's a choice. It's his choice. I think Jonah here represents Israel. Kasi diba, Israel was called to be a light for the nations, but they refused it. They don't want to fulfill their vocation. Ito yung nire-represent ni Jonah.
It's like even the very people of God are moving away from God.
And when we move away from the presence of God, look what happens. We bring death, not life. Kaya tinan mo yung effect na dun sa pagan sailors. Muntik nang mamatay yung mga pagan sailors. This is one of the big themes in the Old Testament. The presence of God is life. That's why Jesus is
the life,
the way, the truth, and the life, because He is the new temple where the presence of God could be experienced.
Emmanuel, God is with us.
He's the Emmanuel, the God who tabernacled with us.
And to not be like Jesus, which is to offer forgiveness for everyone, even our enemies, is to not want Jesus.
And we bring death.
And it's a choice that we can make to bring life, to bring Jesus, or to bring death.
Or bring death.
And yet, even when we do not choose to follow the Lord, He has His ways of working. A while ago, you asked me to note the afraids, and we counted 4. And that has a short story in it. In the first afraid, they were afraid of the sea, of the mighty tempest. And then Jonah said, I'm a Hebrew, I fear the Lord. But his fear was hollow. He wasn't actually following. And then the sailors were afraid again, but now it was redirected. They knew who they were afraid of. They knew it wasn't just the sea, just a random storm, but the Lord of the storms. And in the fourth afraid, in which they were greatly afraid, they knew how to properly worship the Lord. And in all of this, Jonah wasn't reaching out to them. In fact, he was running away from the Lord. And yet, the Lord has this funny way of bringing his people to him.
Through his agents, like the wind, the seas, the waves.
Yeah.
Those were enough for the sailors to know that God must be feared.
He offers us that privilege to be part of his work, but still his work is not dependent on us.
Yeah.
If we don't obey, then he'll do his work through all these,
Other
through the
agents.
entire world.
Exactly. Even the rocks will cry out. Sayang we're invited. We are invited to participate in his work.
Yeah.
Tapos sinasayang natin.
Sayang.
Going through this again, this chapter a second time, it's always just so funny to think that this is a prophet. And I like what Raina pointed out na about Jonah's version of justice and then God's version of justice. No?
Mhm.
When I was going through this with Raina, he mentioned we kind of mix our version of what we think is good and what God thinks is good. So in God's eyes, it's good now we're giving these Assyrians a chance to change their ways, repent. But for Jonah, it's like, no, punish them. They
Yeah.
deserve it.
Mhm.
So sometimes we need to, rather all times, we should be thinking more about what God thinks is good rather
Yeah.
than what we think is good.
That's true.
Our way of thinking it is pretty sure twisted na.
Yeah, definitely. There's parang nag-iisip na ako ng mga Bible verses for the kids to memorize. They're like 6 years old, 3 years old, diba? So, but the one
Yeah.
we started was the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. I don't know why, but I felt like that's where we should start.
Yeah.
It is
Mhm.
in knowing who God is, the source of all mercy and compassion and love and forgiveness. So if we truly know the Holy One, if we truly know God, this is the God who we fear, and listening to Him, diba? Then we can live a good life. It's what wisdom is. It's a good life.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I guess that's it for Jonah chapter 1. And join us for what happens inside the belly of the fish. So Jonah chapter 2 coming up in a few weeks. See you guys.
Bye. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the UCM Interface Bible Study Podcast. If you want to know more about our ministry, check out the UCM Interface Facebook page or email us at ucminterface@gmail.com. Join us at Union Church of Manila, Rada, Corner Legazpi, Makati City. Our Sunday services are also on YouTube. Thanks and God bless.